Great. So to start off, I'm Divya Hegde. I'm a former Googler and I did my master's in integrated marketing communications from Northwestern University. So on paper, it sounds great, right? But as I'm going to illustrate through the presentation, you're going to realize that a great company and a great degree only gets your foot in the door. The rest of it all is an uphill struggle for all of us. I'm also the founder of a digital marketing agency called the Integrated Penguin. A little bit about my company. We have offices in Bangalore and Auckland. We do branding and communications, UI, UX. I know someone in the window spoke about them being in UX and wanting to incorporate that into social entrepreneurship. We also do gaming, AR, and VR. I'll get to the show reel if we have time later. We're also building on a game for kids that works towards gender sensitivity issues because we all know that adults are beyond hope, right? So we thought we'd target the kids and hopefully come up with a more egalitarian society. So the game incorporates gender issues like why can't boys cry? Why shouldn't girls go to work? Why should girls be the only ones helping in the kitchen? It's also incorporating topics like gender confirmation, gender variance, all the things that our society is supposed to be tolerant with, but unfortunately, we're not there yet. Um, Next slide. Occupy is where we incorporate VR into physiotherapy, given how the post COVID world is going to be different. This is not something we planned after COVID, but we were already working on it pre COVID, where if you're a physiotherapy patient and you're lazy like me, you'd rather be engaged in an exotic world while your doctor is able to observe your improvements in range of motions. I'm quickly running through this so that we get to the meat of it all. So, tip sessions is actually the meat of it all, which I'll take as an example and illustrate to you guys how you can interweave design and tech and create social impact. So, you all must have heard of this. Two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Our session today is going to be about purpose. Before we get to that, can any of y'all tell me what is purpose? Or have you found your purpose? That's great, great answers. Most of us go to our graves with our music still inside us, unplayed, and it doesn't have to be this way, actually. Finding your purpose is time consuming, but it's definitely not difficult. Your purpose is your brand, who you are, and what makes you distinctive, right? So it's not your degree, it's not your experiences, what's there on your resume. Exactly, Dilruba. Purpose is the reason of doing what we are doing. Yeah, it's ikigai. So if you know your purpose, how do you go about it? And if you don't yet know your purpose, then how do you find it? I'm going to try and give you like a 4-step framework. If you have a pen and paper, that's great. If not, you can get in touch with me. My details will be there at the end of this presentation. You can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to talk to you. I'm also keeping in mind that there are people still in college as part of my audience. So this will especially, I think, help them. If you can divide your page into 4 halves and divide it into, just put the title strengths, weaknesses, strengths on your left hand side, weaknesses on your right hand side, fears below your strengths, and dreams below your weaknesses. So if you have strengths, weaknesses, fears, and dreams written down, please make a list under each one of those, right? So once you've made the list, I want you to really look at the list and see that your weaknesses and fears feed on each other quite often, but your strengths and dreams quite often fail to do that. And that's a very self limiting habit. Does anyone agree with me? Great. So, can anyone tell me if they found their purpose and what it is? In one line. Okay, Timia says IT and diversity and inclusion. Great. Making e-commerce more sustainable. That's great. So now that I've given you the framework, please, please, please work on it. Get back to me if you need help. My email address is divya@tip.agency. It's going to come at the end of the session as well. I'm happy to help anyone frame their purpose. Remember, it's strength, weakness, fears, and dreams. That's where you start. If you don't acknowledge it to yourself, um, you're not going to be able to express it to the world. And even if you do, it's going to come out in a very confused format. Great question, Mary. I'm getting to that. So, my purpose is interweaving design and tech for social impact in whatever capacity it may be. So, it's because of the discovery of this purpose that I created an NGO called TIP Sessions. Now, I'm really grateful that I come from a really small coastal town. So that's my birthplace. And then I've had education in larger towns. So I have like a blend of these unique experiences where I understand grassroots problems and I have the know-how, the design know-how to tackle these problems. And this is something I discovered through the framework that I used. And that's how I arrived at my purpose, interweaving design and tech for social impact. Now, your purpose doesn't have to be something that blows the world. It can be starting right in your neighborhood, in your hometown, in your own homes, but you've got to have the grit, the conviction, and the resilience, especially coming, especially as women, we do face a lot of challenges. It could be on the home front because women are often seen as a caregiver role and men are seen as a breadwinner role. Here, I'm not talking only about those of us who are fortunate to have the education or the exposure. I'm talking about um, women from the most remote areas, women from homes that maybe can't afford much in terms of facilities to give to them. So when we talk about interweaving design and tech for social impact, we're talking not just about women in the metros, but women in remote areas and villages as well. So as I was saying, tip sessions. Ours is an NGO that works on climate change and establishing a circular economy to bring more women into the workforce. Hi, Nidhi. So what we did initially is since I am a girl that's brought up in the city, I went back to my hometown and said, guys, your place is so beautiful. Why are we ruining, our coastal our aspirations? And to give you a little background about the place that I come from, it's called Udupi. We have the most number of literate people. That's not the problem at all. But the problem lies when bigger corporations for so many years have been peddling, um, you know, plastic packaging and plastic goods as aspirational. So these people here believe that plastic could be aspirational. And here we are, city bred kids, going to small towns and saying, no, 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 you know what? Plastic is really bad. You shouldn't be doing that. We know better than you, blah, blah, blah. And what do you think happened? Can anyone take a guess on what happened? How do you think they responded to us? Spot on. Nothing much happened at all. In fact, they started snickering at us. Exactly. They said, "Oh, so you've enjoyed all the facilities the first world has to give you, and now you're coming and telling us that we're not entitled to cars and fridges and apartments and all the fancy things that we've always aspired to have, right?" So here's where design and tech steps in. We had to really step back and research. And we realized that design and tech allows high impact solutions to social problems to bubble up from below rather than being imposed from the top. What we were doing essentially is we were imposing from the top. Clearly, if I came to you and told you your way of life is wrong, listen to me, what's the proof? And who are you to even lecture me, right? So what we had to do is really step back, get off our high horses, and go and live with these people. I'm from there, but I don't live there. So we had to spend maybe over a year, almost 2 years, living with these people, understanding their lifestyles, understanding their struggles, their dreams, their aspirations. And we finally were able to get through to them. And I'm going to take you through how we got through to them. Again, it's a 4-point framework, and I believe this is applicable pretty uniformly in most problems that you solve at the community level. Don't communicate at hitting sales with the next billion users. I know a lot of designers and tech folks are just given briefs and they're like, okay, this is what we need to sell to whoever. So make customer personas, treat them as resources or treat them as, you know, masses and individual people with dreams and go out there and sell. But social impact, especially, is not at all like that. Exactly, Mary, I agree 100% with you. Mary says, I've seen this happen all the time. Developmental organizations, NGOs coming to Kampala and implementing their solutions without much regard for people they are even solving for. It's 100% true, and we're guilty of doing that too, despite being from the same place. And that is why, like, we really had to eat humble pie, go back and really research our audiences and get them on the program with us. So, like I said, 4 point framework, communication is key. You're not talking at them, you're not talking to them, you're talking with them, which means you have to involve local community leaders, local heroes that speak your audience's language. You have to learn to speak your audience's language. So, first point, communication. Second, empower local communities. Great, you're going with a purpose. You can see that something's wrong in that community, or at least you perceive something's wrong in that community. You want to change the ways of thinking. How do you do that? You need to empower the local communities. It's not about you going there and making the change. It's about teaching them to make that change. So with tip sessions, what we did is we went out there. Since plastic was a problem that we saw at hand, what we did is, we started educating the kids through schools and colleges, who in turn educated the parents, because these are areas where parents involve their kids even in um, purchase decisions for the household, right? So something as big as this, parents will definitely listen to their children, because children are finally going to school and learning things that these parents didn't have exposure to. So making the children stakeholders of our initiative was paramount. Secondly, you can't tell people, okay, don't use plastic, but I don't have an alternative for you. So then what do you want people to do? What action do you want them to take? Have your call to action and your solution to that action very crystal clear. What we did is we roped in the local women. We gave them jobs to stitch cloth bags so that they can replace them with plastic bags that they take to the store. We reached out to local shopkeepers. We gave them cloth bags so that they could put the groceries and household items in the cloth bags and give it to a customer next time, rather than continue the circulation of plastic bags. Now, that's a small way in which we started. Exactly, eco-friendly drive. In comparison, how do we implement sustainability in developed metropolitan cities where things seem to have gone out of hand already? Nazneen, here, I think the government intention really comes into play. I'll get to that in a bit once I'm done with the framework. But yes, the solution to metropolitan cities and tier 2 and 3 cities are largely different, and I will get to that. So here's how we empowered local communities by creating jobs. So we create jobs, we put the articles that were created back into their economy and try to sort of create a circular economy. Today, where we are, we've also trained the women to make eco-friendly products made of turmeric. Basically, if you remember your grandmother's recipes, that's what we're trying to bring back into circulation, be it for beauty, a few health problems, etc. So the idea is we need to go back to our roots, and that's when we were really happy, right? That's right, Aishwarya, homemade. And we're trying to educate and make these people understand that they had the best treasures that they are sort of throwing in the wind for a lifestyle that we city folks have imbibed, Nazneen, which is not really helping us at all. We've chased something that's literally coming back to bite us in the ass. Working with hyperlocal systems, when you work in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, you cannot do it independently. You have to take into account the local administration, because that's what people listen to. You cannot work independently. So, factoring in hyperlocal systems is extremely important, and so is addressing core beliefs. Now, if someone believes deep in their heart that infrastructure at the cost of climate is important, big apartments that are not filled up are important, plastic is attractive, non plastic is not. What do? You address the core belief. How do you do that? Here's how we went about. We leveraged arts and culture. This specific place that I'm talking about, Yakshagana is an art form that's huge in Karnataka. So we roped in Yakshagana artists and had street plays at Sunday markets and in schools where we involved the kids and made them enact plays, made them enact roles that illustrated the ill effects of plastic. And when you're entertaining audiences and educating them at the same time, you have a better shot at hitting your goals and changing their thought processes and sort of trying to address their core beliefs. So, 4 point framework: communication, empower local communities, work with hyperlocal systems, addressing core beliefs. Please note that down or contact me later for the same. So, essentially, what we did was we incorporated design thinking, leveraged arts and culture, and engaged with people with really simple tech that works for them rather than making people work to understand tech. So, when I talk about using design and tech for social impact, I don't mean you need to wake up one day and invent some new technology. I mean, take tech that exists, make sure it's user friendly, and allow people to use it rather than making it such a big headache for them that they don't want to use it at all. You will be surprised at what we used. How many of you guys cringe at the mention of TikTok in my audience here? Wow, great. So that's what we used. We used TikTok. I used to cringe at TikTok too, but here's the thing: TikTok allows for localization. And as you guys all know, vernacular is really, really hot, finally coming of age. And yes, TikTok makes it so easy for them to understand. It entertains them on a daily basis. People started making TikTok videos on the ill effects of plastic. It could be comedy, it could be emotional, whatever it was. TikTok was their jam. And who are we to judge that, right? Yeah, Sheena, me too, but hard lessons. Sheena says she never thought TikTok would be of any use to advocacy, and we were really, really surprised as well. It's not even that we told them to use TikTok, but school kids and college kids started using TikToks, mothers and fathers started using TikTok because it's their language of communication and sharing feelings. And we're all from the background where design thinking is um, Apple, technology is Samsung, whatever it is. But these folks are not into that kind of mindset. And if you think about it, they're way more open-minded than you and I. We've been given structures and frameworks, and we think within those boxes. But unfortunately, those boxes don't apply to, um, say, 60% of India. So yeah, TikTok is one of the main methods for us to spread advocacy. The other is WhatsApp. WhatsApp is hugely popular in India from the time you wake up till you go to bed with your last good night message. WhatsApp is something you cannot escape, and people love to communicate Okay, I'm back. Yay. Let me screen share. Okay, so our initial failures were only because we failed to consider the culture and needs of the people living in the community, which means TikTok, which means local arts and culture, which means WhatsApp, which means whatever means it takes to communicate with them, getting off our high horses, forgetting that design is Apple and Apple is design that is preached to us day in and day out, and becoming one of them. It is truly in the sense of getting into the shoes of your audience, and no cookie cutter formulas are going to work. So does that mean if you use design and tech for social impact, you're compromising on your ambition? Do ambition and social impact actually seem at loggerheads with each other? Not of late, because more and more um, VCs, companies, and corporates are getting into the space where they believe that leadership is not just taking your company sales from 10 to 100, it's about taking society along with you and giving a good life to whoever you come in contact with. So I wouldn't say anymore that doing social impact is compromising on your ambition. However, I did feel many years ago that it was the case. Also, do remember that social changes require systematic solutions that are grounded in the audience's and customers' needs, like I've gone over with the tip sessions example. Now, what are the social benefits, costs, and risks of technology? I've already discussed this where I said that you cannot use technology that bamboozles your audience or makes them work for technology. You need to use technology that works for your audience. Like I've mentioned, the acceptability rate of our NGO within the community is much higher. For example, there was a time when we had to like sort of wait at government offices. Now we're being invited by panchayats to take over their waste management centers. And because we've incorporated very simple apps for waste management that the waste workers themselves can use, we're working on an app that uses very simple technology that sort of calculates people's carbon footprint, and this excites the college students a lot. We're finally being invited to take care of one of the largest waste management centers in the district, and we're working on making that a sort of circular model where we're generating income from the waste management center. We have a nursery where we're selling plants and seeds to public, and we have a close by market where the upside cycle products are also being sold. So we're working on that sort of model right now, and we've gained the trust of the local administration after many trips to their offices, and finally sort of being accepted by the local population. Thank you, Parnika. Simple technology, like you said, can really bring about huge change. It's about recognizing that technology works for people, people don't work for um, technology. Coming to my next slide. Okay, we're done with social impact design and um, technology. If you guys have any questions at the moment, please let me know. Could someone tell me how much time I have left? Does anyone have any idea? Oh, wow. Okay. So then we're going to, okay, great. Let me skip to the next part of my session. My email address is divya@tip.agency. Please get back to me with questions if you have any. I'll be happy to answer them. Women in the post-COVID workforce. Uh, do you think our plight is going to be any different post-COVID? Divya@tip.agency. TIP.agency. Great. So since we're short of time, I'm going to quickly run through this part of the session. Now, there's a typical sort of understanding that the male is the breadwinner, is the caregiver. And honestly, when COVID happened and people said work from home, I was one of those people that were excited that, you know what, the field is going to be a level playing field now. Women will never be told, oh, you know what, your family, you're going to focus on that. You're going to prioritize your home. We cannot give you promotions. We cannot give you a job for part time, etc. So I was really happy that women are finally coming of age in their careers in terms of acceptance. But what actually happened was women had to double down. They have homework, they have work from home, and they have their caregiver role, right? So here's where corporates that wax eloquent about gender equality need to step in. Here's where governments need to step in. Here's where we as women need to step in. Not be afraid to acknowledge our ambition and say, you know what, the work at home has got to be 50-50. Men have to step up. It's time for us to chase our ambitions. And I think coming out of COVID, here are the 8 essential skills that will help us excel in a post COVID world. And those are adaptability and flexibility. I think we women are fantastic at that. We juggle home and work equally well. And given the nuances and the way things are going to change at workplaces in the post COVID world, I don't think we should have a problem. Tech savviness, I don't mean just for women in the metros, I mean for women in tier 2 and 3 cities as well. We've got to get tech savvy. If you have a maid, if you know a woman who's absolutely blank with tech, please help her come on board with tech. It doesn't have to be data analysis, but she's got to get comfortable with tech. Creativity and innovation. We've seen businesses and offices pivot with their services, with their style of functioning, with the products that they give to their audiences. So you need to be able to think on your feet, which brings me to critical thinking. Be practical about your decisions. Digital skills, just like tech savviness, is really, really important because everything's going online, whether we like it or not. Leadership, it doesn't mean you have to lead from the front. It can be soft leadership from the back, but it just definitely means putting your foot uh, down and not taking things down lying. Leadership is a struggle. I've been trying to adapt. This is my first time leading a team, and it's one of the 16 people across different regions. Yeah, I understand. I do have teams across regions, and it's hard, but leadership is also about showing that you're vulnerable. And you know what? Women are way better at doing that than men. Leadership is not about being a stone, it's about showing your human side. And that's when your team understands that you're doing your best for them. Next is emotional intelligence. No points for guessing that we women are better there. And commit to lifelong learning. And you know what? I'm really happy that The great thing about post-COVID work life is finally Corona has exposed that you don't need a fancy degree or a certificate to show your worth and your critical thinking skills or your ability to innovate. It's a widely acknowledged fact now that your degree and your certificate doesn't really reflect who you are, but you got to continuously commit to learning. Maybe it's open source learning, it's your MOOC courses, whatever it is. Ensure that you're constantly upskilling, and upskilling without applying is, I'm sorry, of no use. So you've got to find situations where you apply your upskilling to your courses. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, we've actually come to the end of the session. I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning of the session, I told you that I'm from Google and Northwestern. Those two things got my foot in the door into other places, but the rest of the things where we win startup competitions, where we get recognized by the government or any awards, it's all about understanding your audience. It's about smoothly transitioning design and tech for social impact, and it's hard work. And I think um, what helped me most was to acknowledge my drawbacks and work on them, acknowledge that I'm ambitious and make it known to people around me. Um, and just know that everyone's not going to love you. There are going to be people who don't like you, but that shouldn't stop you. You're not here to please everyone. You're here to make a career for yourself and meet your ambitions. So Ms. Jain says, in a country like ours, how does a woman leader get power when she has to lead senior male colleagues? I believe it's not only about good female leader a person is, but also how supportive and open-minded her team is. Definitely, I think so too. But we have an added challenge here. Sometimes your team may not be open-minded at all, and I understand completely where you come from, Jane, and that's why I said you need your government, your CEOs that talk about gender equality all the time, um, and everyone else to step in with policy changes. And that's where we need each other as women to support each other rather than putting each other down. And I know it's an unpopular opinion, but it does happen. For us to make a change, we first need to unite and group together before we even make change outside, right? So, agreed, Jane, it is a hard task, but you've got to keep at it. Resilience, tenacity, and grit. Don't let things break you. And sometimes it's our own family, right? We have to reason with our family. And they may not love you or like you for some of the things you say, but if it's really your purpose and it really drives you, we have to get down to that work. It's about changing each team member. It's time consuming, it's annoying, but that's why you have so many women's groups. Enlist the help of any woman mentor. You know, mentorship, by the way, I think is really, really important for anyone in their career. I'd love to talk more on that, Nancy, if you want to contact me outside of this. Mary says, how do you get your team to trust you? This is something you get done by doing rather than saying. Mary, again, it's an uphill task. You've got to be an example for your team. You've got to spend hours and hours and hours listening to them. And this is where I said, if you show them that you're human and you're doing your best, they will have a tendency to reciprocate. Usually there's a tendency that, oh, the management is separate, the team is separate. Literally, the management is seen as heartless at times. So if you can expose that vulnerable side to you, it just give me one moment. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಬರ್ತೀರಾ? ನಾನು ಹೌದು ಆಮೇಲೆ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ. Sorry, Mary, I'm happy to talk to you outside of course, I can't answer, I can't go through the individual um, issue at hand now, but I'm happy to talk outside about it. Thanks, Mary. So, yeah, like I said, for anything to happen, first thing to do is acknowledge your ambition. Don't be hesitant or ashamed about it. Don't, just one second. ಹೋಗಿ ಆ ಕಡೆ ನಾನು ಕರಿತೀನಿ ಬೇಡ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಬನ್ನಿ ನಾನು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. Right. So it's sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm trying to keep people out of the room. Does anyone else have any questions? Do you want me to go back to any specific slide and address it? There was one person that asked about change in the metros. Who was that? I'm happy to share the slides. Let me know who I need to send it to, or if you guys will email me, I'll send it out to you all. I don't think the slides had the frameworks written down, but I'm happy to share the frameworks as well. One last question about change making in the metros. I had said that change making in the metros is very different from change making in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And it's true. But the good thing is in the metros, there are a lot of groups. Yes, Nancy, I will share the frameworks as well. There are a lot of groups in the metros that are working on change. It would be good for you to join one of those groups and see how things work. It is a lot harder to change um, people with facilities than it is to change people without facilities, unfortunately. And also, it is like an unpopular um, opinion. That's why I suggest that you join one of the NGOs or join one of the change making groups, especially during COVID. If you've seen, people who've caused the most problems have been folks from the city. It's not people from outside, which is very sad on one level because we have migrants, and we've all seen this on TV, who have nothing, walking for miles and miles, thousands of miles. And then there are comfortable folks in their home acting completely entitled, flouting rules. So, yes, it is, yes, Aishwarya, totes. And we do blame the rural people and we cast judgments on migrants. But, if you've seen the Pari Network or P. Sainath talking, you'll understand that we are now focusing on migrants only because we need them for our work. Else, migrants were really non-existent to us, and that's how brutal and insensitive city folks have become. And I'm hoping that COVID, now that it's exposed city folks, it's going to also change mindsets, and people will consume what is only essential and required and not excessively. It's yet to be seen, but I really hope nature gets a break and people get a break and there's more equitable distribution in the future. Okay, I think I'm done. If If anyone has more questions, I'm happy to answer. Here are my details. If you want to take a quick screenshot or a picture of it on your phone so that you can get in touch with me later. Great. Thank you so much, guys, for staying and connecting with me and hearing me out. I'm here till the session ends. If anyone has specific questions. You're welcome, Saloni and Farida. Does anyone want to add anything to what I've said in my slides or thoughts, perhaps? Okay, so shall I? Perfect, Saloni. I'd be happy to discuss with you. Get in touch with me anytime. All right, shall I wrap up the session? Definitely. I'll definitely go through the on ground challenges next time. I thought 20 minutes was a lot, but I seem to have overshot it by a big margin. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for staying on and listening. Like I said, happy to discuss about career ambition, social impact, tech, and design at any time. Feel free to get in touch with me. Stay safe and stay sane. Thank you.